Great. Okay, thanks. So, yeah, time for another episode of our voyages around the world with the good ship Praxis. As you can tell, I've lost my hat, so I fashioned a new one out of a medical masks or non-medical mask box, as it turns out. I'm going to try and keep it on. So today we're visiting Elke. Elke, should we start off, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us something about where you are?
Sure, I'm Elke Schüßler. I'm a professor at the Johannes Kepler University in Linz in Austria. And that's also where I currently am, just coming back from a nice vacation in Italy. But yes, and I'm at home.
Cool. Can you say a little bit more about what you do in terms of research and stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm an organization researcher. So I come from the management business studies field, and I research various topics, but they all have to do kind of with what management scholars now call grand challenges. So I have studied, to use the practice term, practices of internationalization, of building global supply chains from a strategic management perspective, but also from a sort of labor standards perspective, and that's still an ongoing topic. And I'm also studying digital work practices. My background is in industrial relations, so I tend to try to link work, industrial relations related topics with sort of standard management organization theory topics. So these are two big fields I'm currently still working on. There are many others, but we want to keep it to 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Thank you. Natalia, I'll pass over to you for some other questions.
Yes, hi Elke, I'm Natalia. My identity is somewhat fluid. I was previously a pirate. I was also a tourist/secret agent. Today, let me introduce myself as a camera operator, documenting our journey. And I would like to ask you, how did you encounter practice theory?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I encountered it in through my doctoral dissertation, which I wrote with Jörg Südow at Freie Universität Berlin, very similar to the story you heard from Ignas. Jörg is, of course, an avid structuration theorist, ergo practice theorist. And he introduced me quite naturally to the concept. I did my thesis in the context of the path dependence research group that was there for several years. And so for me to get my head around path dependence and how organizations became path dependent, but also always with an interest, that's always an interest I have change, right? How can we change things? So how can we overcome path dependence? Practice theory, and specifically the structuration theory branch, stream has been kind of eye-opening for me to get my head around these dynamics, the sort of role of agency, but also the structural embeddedness of agency.
And what in particular attracted you to practice theory?
Yes, it's first of all this interplay of the duality of structure and agency. So I think for me that is sort of a core conundrum. I'm like most social researchers, I guess. I'm grappling with. And actually, I started my thesis after working in practice for 3 years. So I worked as a consultant, and I observed many things that I felt were not necessarily making a lot of sense. And also, when I encountered practice theory or structuration theory in particular, I found it very helpful to make sense of these things because of this mix of, okay, people do stuff, but why do they do stuff and how do they do stuff in a certain way, which has to do with structures, but the structures are not determining. So the core idea of the interplay of the duality of structure was what I really found most useful, and I think what I still find most useful, though I now would add some additional aspects. But that was the first thing that kind of got me hooked. In addition then to the three modalities, right? The structures of domination, signification, and so on, which capture different dimensions of how structures influence agency.
Mm-hmm. And what ideas are you currently working with? Is it still structuration or something else?
Yes, I guess you never read as much or dig in as much as in your doctoral thesis. So I'm very much imprinted still by structuration theory, but I'm not necessarily fixated on it. I'm more an empiricist, so most of my work actually is also empirically driven at the moment to really deal with these problems, and then I'm kind of pragmatic in the way I use theoretical concepts such as the concept of practice, and I've used it recently also a lot in interdisciplinary collaborations, where also we didn't necessarily need to come to a very strict understanding of, okay, we do practice following Giddens or practice following Schatzky, but we used it more as a sort of bridging concept. So I'm not fixated on Giddens, but I'm still sort of most influenced by it. I've recently, maybe as a side note, worked together with a colleague from sociology who's an avid Bourdieusian. So she introduced me to his thinking, and because I also work a lot with organizational field theory, I have found his thinking also very, very interesting, though I'm not at all an expert on it.
That's great. Well, I'm Elizabeth, and I'm a kind of visiting anthropologist, sort of, roaming the world. And I'm especially interested in tribes and social groups. And I'm curious to know, you've already mentioned a few colleagues, but are you part of a group, or are you really working on your own, or how is it with you? Because I do want to understand these subcultures.
Yeah, I guess I'm a very tribal person. I almost never work alone. Already in my thesis, it was a very of course, I wrote the thesis on my own, but the whole intellectual development was part of a group of 15 doctoral researchers and sort of 10 faculty members guiding us. So already that was a very tribal exercise in a sense. And I've worked in mostly large research projects ever since. But not with a fixed tribe. So my tribes have moved
many
around.
Tribes, yeah.
Yes, several.
So do you see yourself as part of a particular practice theory tribe, or maybe not?
No, I guess I'm more of a boundary spanner, connecting different tribes from different disciplines, which I think is easier to do if you're not too fixated on one particular thing.
That's excellent, especially for our travels, because we're not fixated, we're not fixed on any location. So there's two things. One is, who else, where should we go next? Who would you like to meet next? Where should we go on our travels?
Yes,
Any
well,
suggestions?
I've looked at the map and I thought, since you're traveling by ship, you should be going a little far over the ocean, and I think Hong Kong would be a really great destination.
Fantastic. I'd love to go there. Yeah.
There's Daisy Lee, who sounds nice.
Yes. Well, that's where we'll aim for next. And as we go on our travels, we're collecting souvenirs. What would you like to give us?
Well, yes. Again, I have to get up briefly.
Yeah, sure.
I think what you do need for traveling.
Oh, yes.
Right? Because it's a long trip to Hong Kong. And I hope one of you can sing some sailor songs.
That's fantastic. Some practice theory shanties. That's what we're after next. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Elke.
Well, thank you. Nice to meet you all, and good travels.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.